Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to cover a few techniques and methods that will allow you to minimize risk and maximize your profits during earnings season. As I'm sure you know, the earnings season can be tricky with a lot of volatility and many surprises. Figuring out how to trade during earnings can be a real puzzle, one that we need to solve in order to be successful. An earnings beat and a bullish outlook can lead to huge gains, while an unexpected earnings miss can turn into a big loss. So we need to be cautious. The most important aspect of trading during earnings season is to know when the earnings dates of your stocks are coming up and be prepared. Fortunately, VectorVest has built-in tools that allow you to keep track of upcoming earnings dates and do a complete analysis of your stocks and the market to help you determine if a stock is more likely to beat their estimates or come in below their estimates. By way of background, my name is Stan Heller. I'll be your presenter today, and I'm primarily a long-term investor who also does some swing trading and options trading. I've been a VectorVest subscriber since 2003 and a part-time instructor since 2010 after I took early retirement following a career in university and healthcare administration. So let's get started. First, just a quick risk disclaimer. I'm sure you're aware there is risk in investing. As is noted down below, everything you will see and hear today is for educational purposes only and should never be considered as an investment advice. The information is designed to empower you to make your own investment decisions, and these decisions are yours and yours alone to make. So what you will learn during this session, I consider it absolutely essential to know when your company is reporting. VectorVest gives you tools that you can use so that you never get a surprise about an upcoming earnings date. Importantly, this gives you time to do your research and plan your moves in advance. We'll look at the best indicators to predict if a company is more likely to beat or miss earnings. And I'm sure you know there's no crystal ball for this, but VectorVest has analysis tools that put the odds in your favor. Not just stock analysis, but market direction, which is so important. Even if a stock's metrics are solid, you don't want to buy while the market is in a downtrend. And next we'll talk about what most professionals say about whether it's okay to buy stocks right before earnings or not. And we'll look at what most professionals believe is a safer way to buy stocks during earnings season. And finally, we'll just do a quick review of what to do when your stock reports bad earnings. It happens sometimes that the bad earnings comes out and the stock might gap down even below your stop price, and you may not want to sell at that very low price, but what should you do? What is the approach you should take from there? So when we talk about knowing your earnings dates, before you buy or sell a stock, you need to know if the earnings dates is coming up soon. In VectorVest, there are three ways that we can make this determination. First, we can go to the events viewer to see which stocks are reporting on certain days, typically the upcoming week or so. We can add earnings dates to the stock viewer in Portfolio Manager so that we visually, it's right in front of us on a daily basis. When we open the Portfolio Manager, we see when our stocks have upcoming earnings. And finally, we can use Unisearch to find stocks reporting within a specific date range. So let's go into the program and have a look at how that works. So I'm just going to open up VectorVest Canada. And you'll notice it does open up to the home page. This is Thursday morning on July 23rd, and you can see the market is slightly positive here overall, but the TSX is down 14 points and gold is slightly positive. So overall kind of a flat market this morning. From here we go into the Viewers tab. So I just left click on Viewers, and I'll just bring that up here a little bit, and I can look at the Viewers home. Once I click on that, it opens up the full list of viewers, and I'll come down to the Events viewer at the bottom. Left click on it, and it opens up the Events viewer, and you can see the upcoming dividend execution dates and the dividend payout dates, and then we have the upcoming earnings dates. So these are the companies that are reporting today. And if you just want to see the earnings dates, you would just left click on the dividend X dates to remove those, remove the dividend pay dates, and then you just have the earnings dates. And you can scroll down and see what is coming up, for example. And so, for example, we see Yamana is reporting soon. But if I'm looking at other stocks that maybe are coming up in the future, I can just left click into the box at the top, click on Filter by Stocks, and now I can just type in any of our stock symbols. So I can look at Yamana, for example, and Can4, click on those, and of course we know they're coming up on July 24th. And I can also filter by a watch list. Maybe I have a watch list of stocks that I'm watching. So I can come in and choose a watch list. I'll just scroll down here a little bit. There's quite a few watch lists that we certainly could look at. But let's look at the small caps, for example. And now I've got a watch list showing the earnings dates of all the small cap stocks in the software. And I can change the date range. I can narrow it up, or I can broaden it out. Just know if you go more than 2 or 3 months at the most, a lot of companies don't set their earning dates that far in advance, so you may not get an accurate picture of what's coming out if you go, especially if you go beyond 3 months. All right, so that's the Events viewer. Again, a very quick and easy way to find the earnings dates for really your stocks and all the stocks in the database if you like. That's one way to do it. For stocks that you're following or that you maybe own or that you are considering buying, we can use the portfolio manager. So we can go from a watch list and put stocks in a watch list into the portfolio manager, whether that's a watch list of stocks that we own or a watch list of stocks that we might be considering to buy. So from here, I'm just going to left click on the watch list viewer, and I'll just scroll down. I've already done that here to the TSX watch list. These are pre-built watch lists and maintained by the VectorVest database team. And we'll just click on the TSX 60, a very popular watch list, a benchmark of 60 stocks chosen by the TSX to represent basically some of the better higher cap stocks in the TSX. So when I left click on that, it opens up our 60 stocks. I'm just going to bring this up here a little bit to 75 to display them all. So they're all displayed, and these might be stocks that you want to track the earnings dates, the upcoming earnings dates. I'm just going to take I could set up my portfolio from here using the current date, but I may also be interested in going back year to date to see which have been the best performers year to date. So I'm just going to left click on January 2nd. And so all the information in our stock viewer, where we analyze our stocks as a real quick starting point, once you get familiar with our exclusive indicators such as the relative value, the upside potential of a stock, the relative safety, another fundamental indicator. These are on a scale of 0 to 2. telling us how safe the stock is in terms of earnings consistency and predictability. And then we have our technical indicator, the relative timing. On a scale of 0 to 2, is the stock moving up, and how fast and far is the trend? So that's a great indicator. And then we have the composite of our two fundamental indicators and the relative timing technical indicator with our value, safety, and timing, a great place to start. You can see the stocks today are, the ones at the top of the list are doing quite well. Some red, obviously, in here as well. But from here, I can come over and quick folio all, and that just takes us to this portfolio manager tab where we'll have a folio or basically a quick folio of all these 60 stocks. So I'm just going to left click on quick folio all. You can see the other options. I could have highlighted some other stocks, and I could have done the top 10, for example, but I'm going to quick folio all. And from there, I'll just put in the TSX 60, and I'm just interested in the earnings, so I'll just type that in. I'll leave my initial investment at 100,000. I can change my commission. $9.99 is often the bank brokerages. $5.95 is an average with Questrade, for example. And then I'm going to make sure my purchase type is long. I could put in stop criteria, but I don't want to do that. I just want to see the raw return from January 2nd until current. So I'll click on OK, and I'll open the portfolio. All right, so that opens up for me now, and the earnings dates are applied. I've got that set really as a default, so I can see the upcoming earnings dates for stocks that have them listed now for the next 1, 2, 3 months or so, and you can see the dates. And what I like about having it in the portfolio manager is I come into the portfolio manager on a daily basis. If you have a real-time subscription or an intraday, all the information is updated for you. Real-time is tick by tick. Intraday is 15-minute delayed. And if you're end of day, you would come in the evening and look for your upcoming earnings dates. And these are if I left click on the ROI, these are the best performing stocks from the beginning of the year to date. All right. And if I click on the earnings date, click on it twice, now I can see the earnings dates that are coming up very quickly here. Loblaw's reported this morning. Suncor reported this morning. Both had earnings misses, but this is something that you'll then see from the news, and you can right click and go to the stock news and get some information that way. So this can be a list of stocks that you currently own, or it can be, as I've done here, stocks that I'd like to track and follow from a watch list to track those upcoming earnings dates. Very, very handy tool. And our final tool is in the Unisearch tab. And I'm just going to start. What you can do, of course, is come into to any search. For example, we've got some conservative searches, and I've got Steady Eddies here, for example, one of our popular searches. And from here, I can add earnings dates. If I run the search before I add those dates, these will be the stocks that are returned. I've got the top 25. There's actually not that many that meet the criteria right now. The relative safety requirement is greater than or equal to 1.25. So there's not that many that meet such a strong criteria. I can change that and save it if I like. I can change it to at least greater than 1. And with our economic conditions in Canada and elsewhere, that may be very appropriate. And by the way, what I'm showing you today is applicable in any of our VectorVest countries, the US and UK, Europe, any of our VectorVest countries. So so now I've got a lot more stocks. And if I want to learn the earnings dates or put in an indicator to restrict the stocks by earnings date, I just click on the parameter box here, click on stocks, and come to capital appreciation, and I'll select the earnings date. And from here, you can see the choices in the operator. I've got greater than or equal to. If I want to look, far out, or I could have less than or equal to, for example, within the last 30 days, or coming up in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or a year. Again, you don't want to go too far out. And I can just hit display the earnings dates as well, which will just produce a new column here and show the earnings dates that are coming up. And there you have the earnings dates selected. A popular one, for example, if I set this back, if I'm doing some historical testing, for example, I could come back, say, to July 6th and less than, and I can just use a custom field here, and I might bring this down just one day out so I can find the stocks that maybe had, and we had none reporting. I have to go a little bit further out. So let's go out, say 5 or 6 days here. Still not finding any. So these are ones that have earnings dates coming out within the 60 days from this date. So different ways you can use this this search tool. And again, I've used it with a pre-built search selected, but I can always come in here, click on New Search, and then go ahead and select my earnings dates from there. Really a terrific tool. All right, so from there, I'll just, and again, it works in all countries. I'll go back to our slides very quickly here. So we've talked about the best indicators to predict earnings. We create our watch list in advance. We use the stock viewer and become familiar with our stock. And I showed you how we can analyze a stock. We've got a terrific course in VectorVest that takes you through the steps you need to follow to be successful in stock analysis and market analysis. It's under the training tab, and you'll see here the 30-second stock analysis system, so you can go through that and find more information about analyzing your stocks prior to earnings, for example. And some of the best indicators for looking at the earnings metrics, we always look at price action, of course. Is price trending higher or lower? One of our key technical indicators is that relative timing indicator, which we can place on a graph as well. And is it falling, rising, or holding? So it's a very smart, fast indicator of the stock's trend, often giving us advance information ahead of price action, which direction the stock might be going. We have our value, what is the stock currently worth, and when we are approaching an earnings season, we really want to look at value and see if it's rising or holding steady, and maybe not, at least not falling too sharply. That would be a warning sign. We look at earnings per share. Particularly if we're thinking about buying a stock ahead of earnings, we want to make sure the earnings per share is rising. In VectorVest, the earnings per share is a forward-looking indicator 1 year out, giving us the analyst's reports and combining them into a forecasted earnings per share. So we want to make sure earnings per share is rising, or at least holding steady and not falling as we get ready to buy a stock. And the information can be helpful in determining whether we should step away from a stock that we currently own. We can always buy back in after the earnings, just taking that risk off the table. Sales, are sales rising or falling? This is an important metric when we look at earnings. Is sales growth positive or negative? And then we have our net profit margin, and is it positive or negative? Is it rising or falling when we put it on a chart? These are all things that we can look at in terms of stock analysis prior to earnings. So we wanted to look at a safer way to buy before earnings. And unless you are aggressive and have money that you can afford to lose, the consensus opinion is that it's better to wait for the stock to report earnings. And from there, you can still jump on a stock that has moved up after earnings, do your homework, and buy the stock as it's moving up from there. You won't catch all of the move, obviously, but you have the opportunity to catch a big part of it without taking on that extra risk of buying a stock that is about to report earnings the next day or within days. We use graphs to observe the company's track record from past earnings reports as well. And are analysts raising or lowering their earnings estimates? That's often a terrific indicator of whether a stock might beat or miss earnings. And a site that I like, there may be others, there's brokerage site, for example, but yahoo.com, going to the finance tab, gives you some excellent reports. And then look for pre-earnings news and announcements. Just keep a watchful eye for news that might affect a stock that you own or a stock that you are thinking about buying. And finally, a safer way is always to know your exit strategy before you buy. Where are you going to put your stop, or what's your strategy if you're using one of VectorVest's indicators, such as the profit locker, a trailing stop, or something like that. But just know your exit strategy before you buy. So here is an example of Canadian Pacific Railway. On the Canadian side, it also trades in the US, and you can see that it reported earnings yesterday on July 22nd, and it reported in the morning. And earnings did fall, although there was a beat on the revenue. So kind of a mixed bag, and you can kind of see the indecision over here at the right on the graph. There was a bit of indecision after that earnings, but I wanted to show this one just to show, for example, back here, you can see the earnings release came on this date in October 2019. It was a positive earnings or a bullish earnings report, and the stock did gap up. And so you didn't have to buy ahead of time and take that risk about the earnings release. If you waited until the report came in, you could have still come in. Price got above the 40-day moving average. It was already above the 10-day. The value, this green line, was above the price, so it's an undervalued stock at that time. But most importantly, value was not significantly dropping. That's one of the key things that we look for. And over here in February this year, we had another earnings date, and price was going along quite nicely until the COVID crisis hit, and then of course value dropped, earnings dropped. But as value began to recover and the earnings per share started to move along here, the forecasted earnings, we had another earnings date, and initially there was a little bit of a hesitation, but price did rise, pulled back to the 40-day moving average, which often happens. It was just, the movement wasn't great on this particular earnings date, but then price continued to rise from there. So now we have an idea that, and also I want to point out the relative timing was positive here on this earnings date, as it was for the most recent one as well. And it was turning positive. And when it pulls above 1, that's a positive trend indication. And so we were positive along there. The sales has remained strong for CP on the rail. And the relative safety is above 1, which is positive in our 0 to 2 scale. And for the most recent 2 earnings dates, the relative safety has been holding quite well above 1, right around 1 or above. And then the net profit margin, as you might have expected, certainly did take a little bit of a hit here, but not significant in any major way, from about 33 to 31, so not significant. So a lot of metrics here that you can actually place on a graph, particularly earnings per share, sales, when you can actually see the trend in addition to the raw numbers. It's a tremendous advantage. Now, Tesla reported last evening, so it shows up a big E on our graph, and you can see the last time it reported back here, there was a little bit of hesitation, and then as the market sort of analyzed everything, the stock started to move up. And there's earnings per share rising nicely, sales rising, net profit margin rising, relative safety, the earnings consistency, very, very strong as well. So just very quickly, I'm going to take us to a graph, and I'll go to Canada again. Whoops, got to find it here. There we go. So I'll go to Canada, and again, we can go to our stock viewers this time. So I just make sure I scroll up to the top here, and here's our stock viewer. Left click on that, and notice in the stock viewer we have 2,465 stocks, and they're all sorted by the default value, safety, timing. I can also left click on any of these column headers to change the sort, but I'll leave it that way. But when I click into the viewer box at the top, the search engine, basically, there's Canadian Pacific, and it brings it up in my list. So now I can analyze it in here, and I can graph one stock, all stocks, or top 5, 10, whatever it is. In this case, we only have the one, so I'll just click on it. And what I just wanted to show here is our graph layout in the actual program. You can see our quick dates here at the bottom. Over here at the bottom left is where I will add the earnings dates. So there's our earnings date yesterday for CP. You can see it did open higher today. It actually kind of gapped up and now is pulling back with the closed green candle. It is pulling back a bit, but still higher than the close of yesterday. And then all of our metrics I've added over here on the right, so you'll learn about all of those. And if this is the layout that I want to use for earnings season, I can just left click on Graph Layouts, save, modify layouts, and add a new layout and give it a name. And then when I close it, it will save that layout with that name. And I've got it whenever I want to look at it. All right, so there's all the tools for that. And we're just about wrapping up here. One more thing I just want to show you before we close. Go back to our slides. So in Yahoo Finance, for example, when you go to the Analysis tab, you would go to enter your stock in the search engine, and then call up the Analysis tab, and you will see this approach. So Suncor reported this week as well, and you could see as it was coming up to the earnings date, you had some of the analysts' reports here, the earnings history, the earnings per share, the trend of that earnings, and the earnings revisions, which is very important if a company is having a lot of upward earnings revisions to the bullish side. That can be very positive. In the case of Suncor, there were some revised earning revisions to the upside, but the stock still did not have a beat in the earnings. But it puts the probabilities in your favor, gives you something to look for. And just a quick note, when your stock reports bad earnings, The professionals would say it's time to sell that stock unless you are a real long-term investor and you see a future upside potential. Maybe the earnings miss wasn't severe. There's future prospects. There may have been reasons for a one-time um, loss or miss on earnings. So you need to make those assessments. But in general, unless you're a long-term investor, you want to avoid the risk of a continuing downside. Sometimes a stock will gap down below your stop price, and you do want to sell, but you don't necessarily want to sell from the very bottom of that gap down. So what you can do from there is set a new stop price and keep raising it if the stock starts to rise from that gap down, as it often does. Quite often you will see the news comes out and the stock really takes a strong hit as investors scramble to exit the stock. But when then things kind of settle out and there may be a start to rise up again, and rather than sell at the very low, you might be able to wait and get a little bit better price if the stock does recover once all the information is analyzed and comes out. So that's another approach that you can take, but your goal should be to minimize risk by getting out of the stock at the best price possible, again, unless you're a long-term investor holding for dividends, for other reasons, tax consequences, whatever. You want to avoid risk by selling at the best price possible. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've shown how you can find the event dates or the earnings dates of the stocks that you own and stocks that you might like to own in the future. We've shown how you can analyze a stock in your watch list and create a portfolio of those stocks to manage them from there. And we've shown how you can set up your graphs to get a little bit more insight into some of the earnings metrics and the direction the stock might be going heading into earnings. So that concludes our presentation. If you have questions that you would like to pose, you can certainly call our product support team. If you wish to take a 30-day trial of our VectorVest program, if you don't have it already, it's just $9.95 US for a 30-day trial, and you just call support at 888-658-7638. And if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, just click on the like button, subscribe to our VectorVest channel, drop a comment in the comments section on YouTube, and share the video with others. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.